Today we're going to talk about how the Oklahoma defensive line is probably the most underrated story of the year and the top story to watch going forward, and all that's coming up after the bumper.
What do you mean you don't subscribe to my son's YouTube channel?
Mama, no!
Just snap the damn ball, RJ.
What's up, kinfolk? It's RJ Young. I am not on a step mill. Consider hitting the like and subscribe button because I upload a video every single day. It's always OU related, college football related, sports related. We have a good time. And today we are going to talk about Oklahoma's defensive line and why I think it's one of the most underrated stories of the season and why it is probably going to become the dominant story for the second half of the season. But first, hey man, I was on Amon Poor & Co. last night. You can catch that interview on PBS where I talk about my book, Let It Bang. It's available for pre-order wherever books are sold. I'd appreciate it if you bought it because, well, that'd be cool and I got bills to pay. All right, so now we're going to get into the defensive line. First thing is, we know that Oklahoma is going from a three-man front to a four-man front, and there's been some debate about what that four-man front is going to look like. Now, I contend that the best look is a 4-2-5 because you want to take advantage of your defensive backs, and there's a lot of them for Oklahoma. You can make an argument that they're not the most physical guys, but a 4-2-5 allows the defense to get faster, right? And it allows the defense to get simpler. Both of those things are very big deals when you're playing Big 12 football teams. You want to be fast, and you want the kids to understand what their assignments are and to just play to their abilities. When that's able to occur, you see what Kenneth Murray Jr. has been doing. You see what Curtis Bolton has been doing. However, with Jalen Redmond coming back into the fold in a big way, Brandon Drums reported at 24/7 Sports that he'll play against TCU. I have to wonder what it looks like for the defensive line because, look, Jalen Redmond was a guy who was being thought of as a jack linebacker during the summer and during spring camp. Now, the blood clot issue aside, we know that he's only had a couple of years of organized football, and we know that he's an extremely talented guy. But if Jalen Redmond is the kind of player who can slot right in at defensive end, you have to wonder how deep Oklahoma is on the defensive line. Not as deep as we thought. Ronnie Perkins has been really good. Ronnie Perkins has lived up to the billing of an All-American coming out of high school, and every time he is on the field, Oklahoma's defense looks better. But I've said the same thing about Ryan Jones, and I haven't seen a whole lot of Ryan Jones here lately, and I'll get to that. On the other hand, you're seeing Kenneth Mann come into his own. He's already got 26 tackles this season. He had 28 total last year. He's becoming more of an every down defensive end, and between those two bookends, Ronnie Perkins and Kenneth Mann, I feel good about Oklahoma's defensive end spots, but that's kind of the issue. You've got a bunch of guys you could actually slot into the defensive end position and not enough that you can slot into defensive tackle. Mark Jackson is a glorified defensive end. Whether or not he makes the transition from linebacker to defensive end next year is up for debate. But what I do know is that Jalen Redmond is exactly the kind of tweener that Mike Stoops would recruit. The kind of guy that you want to be able to do all things in all phases, and that's just not the way that you can play football in the Big 12 or honestly in college football and win. I think Neville Gallimore, Dylan Famatau, and Marquise Overton are going to be your dominant stories to watch because those are the only real defensive tackles that anybody trusts to date, man. Michael Thompson was a big get, but he's not going to help you in 2018. That's what blown ACLs are about, not helping you during the season. And that's also the glaring weakness for Oklahoma in its recruiting and the glaring weakness on the front. Whenever you can find one of those defensive tackles that already has the size and the ability to play in the interior, Oklahoma's had to develop them. We haven't actually had a dyed-in-the-wool, pretty amazing defensive tackle show up at Oklahoma since Gerald McCoy. Jordan Phillips needed to be made into that. Jordan Wade didn't really get it for most folks. As a matter of fact, he did what Neville Gallimore's doing right now, which is taking up space, but at the zero technique, that's all he can do. Neville Gallimore is a guy that needs to be able to play in one gap, not two. And with the four-man front, he's going to get an opportunity to do that. But who's going to be his running mate? Again, we have a tweener situation. Both Tyrese Lott and Amani Bledsoe could go either way. We call them defensive ends. If they beefed up a little bit more, maybe they'd be defensive tackles. That's kind of my point, though. This year, you're going to see what and who can be done on the front. And if Jalen Redmond is as good as we're being led to believe that he is ahead of TCU, either Oklahoma's going to get better or Oklahoma ain't going to be very good at all up front. And we have lots of data to show that the defensive line in particular was getting pushed around. And there's no worse sin in college football than being pushed around. Physicality on defense is a must. And a lack of physicality on defense means that Colin Johnson is out there sunning Parnell Motley. It means that LJ Humphrey is out there sunning Trey Brown, who is the best corner on the team. And if you don't have size to combat size, you better be fast. And Oklahoma is fast in the secondary and is fast at linebacker, which is why I also think that the 4-3 could be in play. You could see Kenneth Murray Jr., Curtis Bolden, and or Caleb Kelly, or Levi Draper, or Ryan Jones. That's also your deepest unit. The linebacking core at Oklahoma is the deepest unit on that side of the football. You just have more defensive backs that you could play. So I honestly could see a 4-3, and I could see how it could work, but it's not something I want to match up with 4 receivers on the field. 3 wide receivers and a tight end that can catch. That's just not what I want out there. Because I don't want Ryan Jones having to think about dropping into coverage, even though that's something he could do. He's got a safety background. And I know that Caleb Kelly could do it, but that just ain't what they are trained to do right now. And right now, in the middle of the year, you need to get everybody on the same page doing what they are best at. The time is not now to learn new positions and learn how to play them in a new scheme. You need to pick the scheme that they are most familiar with and run that. It's another reason why I don't think the 4-3 is necessarily the thing to go to. However, Ruffin McNeil knows from a 4-3, and that would give more credence to running a 4-3 at Oklahoma because you want the defense coordinator to know what he's doing. But again, it's about the kids. You have to be able to put the kids in positions to succeed, and you have to be sure that they know what they're doing. And that also brings me back to why the defensive line is going to become the dominant story, because that is the place where I could see the most improvement, not just because you get Jalen Redmond back and because there will be a renewed interest in getting more of those guys on the field, but because you're going to simplify the game for them up front. No more mush rush, no more catch technique. It's going to be single gap and beat people in the gap. The only problem that you're probably going to run into is if offensive linemen can move you out of the gap, because if they can move you out of the gap, they can put you on your back. If they can put you on the back, they can score 7 points. That's a bad look for you on the defensive side of the ball, which leads me back to I want to see a 4-2-5. I think that Oklahoma can recruit to a 4-2-5. I think you can get size and speed at the linebacker and secondary positions that you might not be able to get all the time on the defensive line. And the reason that you might not be able to get that all the time is because finding guys that can play defensive tackle straight out the box that you don't have to develop over 2 or 3 years, like, say, Kenneth Mann, is really difficult because they all go to Georgia, they go to Florida State, they go to Alabama, they go to Clemson, they go to Ohio State. They don't make a habit of coming to the Big 12 to play football. And until you can show that you can take those guys, 4-star and 5-star defensive tackles, put them in position to succeed right away, and let them pin their ears back and go get sacks, you're going to have a hard time recruiting them. Now, that's likely to change now that Mike Stoops is no longer defensive coordinator at Oklahoma, and you're not going to recruit to multiple fronts, and you're not going to put guys in positions that they never played before. You're going to take what they know how to do, and you're going to elevate that. And it's not so much that I think that Oklahoma is incapable of going to get 4-star and 5-star defensive tackles. I'm just saying that Alabama, Georgia, Clemson, Ohio State, Florida State have the franchise on it. And the way that you take the franchise from them is getting back to the college football playoff and winning a national title. That's the big one here, man. It's not enough for Oklahoma to get to the college football playoff. You have to win it because we know what the offense can do, and we've harped on that for a very long time. We've had 2 back-to-back transcendent quarterbacks at Oklahoma in Baker Mayfield and now Kyler Murray. And the fact is, you could have one coming in at Spencer Rattler, but there's going to be a gap year there. You don't really want to play him right away, although you might, because my goodness, look at what Trevor Lawrence is doing. But conventional thinking is you're going to need Tanner Mordecai or Austin Kendall or whoever to be the guy to bridge you to Spencer Rattler, and you're going to need the defense to be better next year than it is this year, and you're going to need it to carry its weight. You're going to need it to basically do what they're doing at Texas, which is be able to run a scheme and run a defense that can stop other teams from scoring. And if you throw the Oklahoma game out, Texas can do that. And to that point, ain't nobody going to keep Oklahoma's offense down. That's the nice thing about being an OU fan. You know the offense is going to get it going, and they're going to drop 35 on somebody at some point. You can bank on getting 35 out of the offense more often than not. But if Oklahoma's going to make the leap, it's going to have to start on the defense, and in particular on the defensive line. So Jalen Redmond is going to show us a lot about what the defensive line can be, and this 4-man front is going to show us even more because we're finally going to get to see kids actually just have their gap and go after people, see if they can't get to the quarterback, get into the backfield, see if we can't get back to getting those tackles for a loss that we saw against Florida Atlantic and that we saw against UCLA, but just to kind of dried up over the last 3-4 games. All right, that's it for me. Deuces.